But how's your electric car going to power your house?
Just when I see that stuff, it's such nonsense, because a lot of people don't actually understand that there are only a handful of cars in Australia that you can actually use to power your home. 2 of them are petrol-powered plug-in hybrids. The one that they had there was an electric. So I just think when they come up with this stuff, it's really disappointing, because you're trying to fool the consumer. When the consumer actually gets in there and realises that what they've been sold isn't true, they're going to be annoyed, and rightfully so, I reckon.
Federal government's going to spend $44 million on, I think, 117 new charging stations. I've been doing a few road trips over the last few months. I went 700 or 800k north of Perth. I
That would have been
turned up in a place called Kalbarri, and they had one charging station around behind the town hall.
Yeah.
And I never saw a car charged on it.
No.
But what happens if suddenly in Kalbarri, 1,000 people from Perth turn up?
Yeah, well, I actually did something kind of similar. I drove from Adelaide to Sydney. We did it in an EV and a diesel car to prove, how good is the charging infrastructure in regional Australia. And it turns out it's not very good. And that's the problem you're going to have. Some of these chargers are taxpayer funded, and a lot of them don't have service level agreements. When you rock up, I went to one the other day, 2 out of 6 were working. And that's my taxpayer dollars that have gone to.
So who's supposed to be maintaining them?
Good question. We've actually asked Arena, who is responsible for dishing out this money, twice now. They just refuse to respond to emails when we ask how many of the charges that are funded by taxpayers are actually working.
And how's the charging, as in how much you pay to use a charger? How does that work? Who does that money go to? And can you just turn up to any charger and it's sort of non-denominational? You can put any car on it?
Thankfully today, charging standards are getting better. So the cars are becoming common. They're all a Type 2 plug at the moment. Charging cost depends on the speed you want. So if you want the fastest charger, it costs the most. The cost of that electricity is going through the roof now as well. So we're reaching a tipping point that if you are charging on public infrastructure in fast chargers, it is now getting quite expensive to charge your car, getting to the point now where it's quite similar to a hybrid in terms of the cost you're paying to fuel versus charging.
The cost of EVs is still the main hurdle for people who want to get into them. I know Kia's introduced a very flash GT version of its electric vehicle. So what's the cheapest EV on the market that people can get into?
You're still looking at about 40 grand. And when we're saying 40 grand, you're talking about a car that isn't exactly going to transport 7 people or your whole family. And if you do want an SUV, which is what people buy in Australia, you're looking at about $70,000 for something that has reasonable range in the Tesla Model Y. The incentives are really not there. Why would you spend 70 grand when you could spend 45 on a RAV4 hybrid, for example? I think that if we do dish out incentives, we need the manufacturers to actually start pushing the price of these things down first.
And watch the number of utes that are going to go out the door in the next couple of weeks, because the tax breaks on utes are about to be thrown out.
Well, I did see in that ad as well, they had an electric ute. They didn't mention that you can't really tow anything with it. It has barely any payload and it won't go anywhere. So, I mean, they just need to get real. Until there are products on the market that are suitable substitutes, we just have to keep doing what we're doing.
Common sense. Paul Maric, thanks for joining us.